ones in front.
Front row seats. Well, thank you all for coming.
You can listen
And appreciate your diligence coming in the rain and everything like that. So it's my pleasure to introduce a very talented artist, sculptor, Teresa, who just returned from a trip in Nepal and India, right?
Just Nepal.
Oh, Nepal. Okay, but India was last month?
Last year.
Oh, last year. It's hard.
Where I had my first pomegranates after, well, the first after you gave me my real first.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Anyway, so thank you all for coming, and that's enough for me talking because now we have a real expert and professor here, Consultant Teresa.
Thank you. Thanks, David, for having me here again, and all the staff that work here. Thank you so much for all of your help. I really appreciate it. Hopefully, I won't disappoint. Okay, so I have some slides. What I'll do is because I'm a caster, I couldn't really do a real demonstration. We didn't want to burn down this house, so this is a metal piece. This one is iron, and then this is a wax piece. This is how they start. So this one's in progress, missing her arm, but I'm sculpting it, so it's okay. I can put it back. So I'll start with a few slides of some of my sculptures, and then I'll show the process of getting this to become this. And then I'll show a metal pour, and then I'll go back to my slides, and then I think if you have questions, there'll be more clarity around like what to ask. So this is what I push. Okay, so this one's bronze. These are all kind of like maybe this size, maybe they get this short, but about that tall. All these first ones. So this one is bronze. This one is aluminum. This one, I think, okay. So this one, you can see a seam line down here. That's my welding. This one, I think I cast that in one piece. Same with this one. This was cast in one piece. So there's no welding done on those. And then this is another bronze one, and this one you can see the welding on the separate panels too. So this one would have been cast, I think it's 3 panels and then a torso. So I molded each of the 3 panels separately, and then the torso molded and cast separately, and then welded all that together. But then I also do, can you guys see okay? It's over here. I also do, they're not really large scale, they're my height, public sculpture works. So these ladies go around to different cities where they have sculpture walks. I just enter them in different sculpture walks, and it gives me a chance to see different parts of the country that I wouldn't normally go to. I just end up in some, like small town in Colorado that I just get to drive and see the country, and then I plot the sculpture here. They give me a check, I go home, go pick it up a year later. Here's another one. This one was sold to a private party in Door County. This one, I think, was taken at the Cedarburg Art Museum when I first made this piece. And this one, I think this one was cast actually all in one piece also. So this one is probably 4 feet tall, but really narrow, so I didn't have to manage a big mold, which the molds are heavier than the sculptures. So it was nice it's nice when I can do this, but that would have required extra people to help lift up the pot of metal with that much metal in it to pour. So that piece is actually probably maybe like 50 pounds only, but like when you're carrying the hot metal plus the shank, which I'll show you, and the pot and all that, that's like 100 pounds, and 2 people lift it up and they'll lift it and pour it. What I'll show you it was done at a university with a hoist, so that made it easier for the molds that I'll show you to get poured. But this one it stood about this high, so it required some extra, like 4 people on a ladle to come and lift and kind of pour at this height rather than being able to pour kind of down low where it's easier. And then this is another one that's, I think this one's called Element Water, and I think I don't know where it is right now. It was in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and then it traveled to Massachusetts or something, but it's on a little traveling tour. There's a network of cities that do these sculpture walks, and like this group is really great because first they treat the artists like rock stars, which is really rare. A lot of times I'll go to a place and, like I said, just plop the sculpture down. They'll be like, all right, thanks, and then you're driving back. This sculpture network, it has Sioux Falls and Mankato, Minnesota, and Eau Claire, Wisconsin, someplace out east that I can't remember, and Castlegar, British Columbia. So one of my sculptures did a little international trip. So I officially get to say that international. That's how big I am. I went to Canada. I haven't even been there. One of my sculptures went to Canada. So that's what these larger sculptures do. They just travel around. And then I think, this is the last one I'll show you right now, because I don't always do ladies. Sometimes I do young ladies. This was a sad story. It's a memorial to a little girl that died in a car crash, but it was it's probably the most meaningful or impactful to me, I guess, piece that I've made, because I was working with her mother, talking a lot to her mother, trying to kind of capture the spirit of this little girl. They always went to Bookworm Gardens in Sheboygan, and so they wanted me to do like one of the books that she likes, which was Goldilocks and the Three Bears. So I did you can kind of see like the book is like alive. The bears are coming out of it, and there's butterflies around her. I made the bench that's behind her. And so that was a difficult piece to do, but probably maybe the piece that mattered the most.
A lot of welding, huh?
A lot of welding. That was cast in several pieces. Yeah, and that one's bronze. And I don't know, that one must be 200 pounds. And it's not very big. It's the size of a 4-year-old girl. So it's life size. It's life size. And so her family goes and sits with her on the bench in Bookworm Gardens, and like, yeah, it's really sweet. It's a really lovely piece that I felt very honored to be able to do. It's like one of the biggest honors in my life. So there's that. Okay, I'm gonna exit from this, and then I'm gonna open this one. So I'm gonna just kind of play this in fast. This is an hour, so I'm not gonna make you watch the whole thing. You don't need that. This was made for students, and you don't need that much in depth. I don't think anyone's planning on going home and making one. But my students had to do like a little portrait head, and so I was showing them how to make a mold so that they could cast it in metal. So they made a reusable mold that they could cast several waxes or whatever different materials, and then they could also do this separate kind of mold to make a metal piece out of it. Mm-hmm. So as I go through this, I'll forward through some of it, and I'm just going to talk through it because I don't like hearing myself talk on the video. Okay, so for this, it's the same process. Okay. I would put it in a box like this. So I would make the box so that there's about 3 inches around the whole piece, and about 3 inches above the high point of the piece, the nose or the dress in this case. And I have all these boxes or all these pieces of wood that are adjustable, so I can just make them the size that I want. And sometimes I have to make a big, like a bigger piece. But I have lots and lots of wood. But you can see like how I clamp it here, and it's, pretty, do I have sand? Yeah, no, not yet. So that's what I would start with, is just kind of like this frame that goes around the piece. And then let's go here. Oh, this, okay, so I'm putting on talc right here so that the sand doesn't stick, because it's a 2-part resin bonded sand. This is actually, this sounds terrible. This is actually not a full round piece. So what I would do with a piece like this is I would make the box around it, and then it would be laying down like this, and then I would put loose sand up around where I want the seam line to go. If loose sand doesn't work because like this is angled up a little bit or this is angled up and the sand keeps wanting to fall away, then I put a little oil in the sand, and that way I can pack it in place and it'll stay in place. And then only half of this would be exposed. So that's how I would set this up inside of a box like that. Now I'm doing math. So I find the amount of sand that I'll need to fill that box with the piece in it with resin bonded sand. And then,
Can I ask you
yes,
a quick
please.
question? I'm so sorry. Have you already made, and you've made the cast, and you made the cast out of wax at this point and crafted it yourself, or does that come later?
So the piece that's in the box right
Yes,
now is
yes.
wax.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep, so
Okay,
it's,
okay.
so it'd be the same as, this one's wax too.
Okay, okay.
So this would be the same process.
Okay, all right.
Okay. So we're making this mold because this mold can handle the temperature of the hot metal.
Okay,
Iron, aluminum, or bronze, any of them.
okay, okay.
So I'm doing a little bucket mix here. So I have two buckets that I can pour back and forth so that I can get a really good mix with the resin. And I'll put in, like these weights are 100 pounds of sand, or pounds of sand. So 50 pounds, 100 pounds, 150 pounds, and then I have a line on there so that I know how much resin to put in the container. And then I'll pour one in, I'll mix it in the buckets, pouring it back and forth. And then when I pour the second one in, the second one is a catalyst. So then it's going to want to, it starts a chemical reaction that's going to want to set up and harden like this. So this is sand. This is bonded sand. And you can come up and touch it after I'm done if you want to, or just feel that it's like, it's a little, it's always messy. So I won't hand it around, but you can kind of like, scratch it or whatever, see like how hard it is. And that can actually, the resin in there can handle the hot metal. So let's move forward a little bit more here. We don't need to, well, here's me mixing it. Blah, blah, blah. There, so I'm holding the bucket down. And sometimes I do this in a cement mixer. It depends on the volume. And if I need more volume, then I'll put the sand in a cement mixer, and that helps. And I still use the big drill as well, just to make sure it's mixed really well, because the cement mixer won't mix it as well as I need it. And then I dump it back and forth between the buckets. Then mix, mix, mix. Gentle ramming. Look at that. You even put This has been a real long time. Okay, so now I have the mixed sand. It has the resin in it.
Okay.
And I'm just gonna put the resin around the piece. And I start like this, because if there's any resin clumps in it that go on the surface of the piece, then I'm gonna get a big wart that casts on the sculpture, and then I'll have to grind it off. So I just rub it between my hands, and it's got the resin in it. So I rub it in between my hands, and it falls down on the piece, and then I just gently pack it as I go. So I'll keep doing this until the box is full, but I don't put any once I get the face coat on, then I just dump it in. You know, I just can go fast because I'm not worried about what's in the middle of the mold. I'm just worried about what's on the surface part of it. And then the reason for all the space around it is so that when I have these two parts that I'll put together, that they can match up nicely. I'll put a key in there and they'll match up nicely. But I want enough thickness because the metal will burn the resin away a little bit. And so I don't want the mold to be so thin that I end up like that the metal melts through the mold and then, you know, spews out all over. So that's why the mold has to have so much sand in it. And you can see that little sculpture was not nearly the volume that the sand is that's going into it. Yeah. So they tend to get pretty heavy. So then I'll wait a little bit because I'm going to gently ram.
So I have a question. Does a piece like that, are there screws on there? Or am I?
Not yet. Not yet. I'll do that in the actual mold.
Oh. Huh.
So.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, drill those in.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But if you're doing ceramic shell, then you build them on.
That's the difference. Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
And one question, so you're talking, that's just a small piece, so some of your
That's
bigger
just,
pieces.
yeah.
They're just,
Yeah.
pieces are huge.
Yeah, so I have some, I really, really want a forklift someday in my life.
Oh my gosh.
But I do have a gantry that I can, you know, lift stuff up, but then I have to do the whole thing outside instead of inside. Inside, I just kind of shimmy them off the table onto a cart and then flip them and then push them back onto the table. But here I'm just using a 2x4, very advanced tools. I'm just using a 2x4 to just ram that down so it gets really tight against the surface. So I overfill it and then I'll just strike it off and make sure it's nice and flat so that when I sit it down on the surface of whatever I'm going to be pouring onto where I set the molds, I won't have to like put little, what are those called, shims or anything in it. Okay, then we'll move on. The extra goes in, let's see. Extra goes in some other molds. So these are what this is from. And that's just a different chemical, that's why it's white instead of it not turning pink. So I'm showing the students, clean out your buckets. Okay, wait, let me see where I'm taking this. So I'm gonna open this up. I'll take all those clamps off and then I'll open the frame up. And then I'm flipping it over. So this actually is just a little wall piece instead of a three-dimensional piece. So in this case, I would have my piece and now I would have had that hard sand that I have up there. That would be a block on this side of the piece. And I would flip it over and get rid of all that loose sand that I had on here. And then it would be like this, there would be a wall of resin bonded sand around it. So that's what I have there. And that's what I'll kind of clean up around the edges and I'll put in, this is where I put in the key so that these two halves fit together. But you can see how much surface is around there, so that I have room to put a key and then I'll have a really tight fit for those two parts to be together. So I'm just cleaning up the wax. I don't take anything out yet. And I'm still talking. Okay, probably putting in, here's where I'm putting in keys so that these parts will fit together. So I'm just making little dents basically. And then I'm gonna put this, box back on it. And I'm going to maintain 3 inches above the piece. So you can see that I have these 2x4s down here. That was to raise that frame up so that I have room on top now. And I have depth in there so that I get another chunk of sand that's going to fit nicely against this first chunk of sand. And then I just go through and do the same process. I'll mix the sand. Oh, sorry. I'm gonna put in some talc so that the two sides don't stick together. And then I'll mix the sand. I'll pour it in here, gently ram. And then here's where we have the piece, and so my piece is just completely captured inside of this mold now, and I'm just hitting the seam line so that the two parts will come open, and then I'll be able to take the wax out. This one had that deep back part of the face in it, so it's not coming open very easily. So that's the back, and then I'll dig out the front, so you end up wrecking the original sculpture. So this, I'll, take knives, butter knives, and little tools and whatever, I have chisels, and try to dig it out. If I'm lucky, I'll be able to just peel it out, and it'll come out, and there'll just be a little bit of wax I have to pull. But let's see what happens with this one.
I see what you have to get all, I see.
And yeah, what'll be left is a really nice impression.
Right, the impression, and then it's poured.
Yeah.
Pour it, yeah, I see. Wow.
So you don't melt the wax out?
Not from these. So the lost wax method, the Syria Purdue, you can do a melt in to the wax, in which case I wouldn't have made a mold that opens. I would just let the wax melt into the sand, but then you never open the mold. It just goes away and melts into the mold.
Okay.
And then it can be a little bit volatile when you pour it then, because there's carbon in there, so it'll just flame up and do maybe spark, do crazy things. So these, any little bit of wax that's left in there, I can take a torch and just burn a little bit.
Okay.
But these molds can really only handle for a sustained period, 400 degrees before they start to break down. So when the metal goes in there, like iron, which we pour maybe 2,800 degrees, because it cools so fast, the sand will hold up just long enough for it to capture the image, and then it starts to break it. So you never can use these molds twice because it burns the whole surface.
Right.
Yes, you know this, but
That's true. Right.
so you see that I'm just pulling out all the piece. So you ruin the original sculpture. So when people ask if I ever have additions, usually I don't, because I've ruined this. So I'm just kind of doing some tedious digging in there. Okay, I'm gonna put this. Let's see, okay, that's just showing how it fits back together perfectly. I'm like, look at how it fits back together. Okay. Oh, here we go. So here I'm showing that you need a specific kind of drill bit. First, it's a cement bit, so it has a little chevron on top, and they're not very sharp. They're for cement, so they start out pretty dull. And then what I'm going to do with this is to drill holes into the sand, because once I close this, there's no way for me to get the metal in there. So I have to drill kind of like places for the metal to go in, and then once it gets in there, these are not porous molds. So if it goes in and I don't give it any vent holes for gases to go out, it will miscast and it'll cast short. So right now I'm kind of just talking about like each piece has its own. You kind of when you're deciding how to engineer the way that the mold should be set up for metal to go in and flow properly, you kind of just think about it like water. Like how would water go into this piece and spread out? And then we have to get it to go back out as well. So we'll make like extra little holes somewhere in another, like at the other end of the piece or something, much smaller hole for the gas to get out. So this one is gonna pour flat like this. These I always pour this way. These always get poured upside down, these cones. And I'll make a third part actually. This, instead of going in the middle of the mold, this will actually butt up against the end of that frame. And so when I open those two halves, I actually when I take off the frame, I can see the hole still in this. So you see this is hollow because I don't want an ingot of bronze or aluminum or whatever. So I can see this when it's still in the mold. And if I made this out of clay or something and this was solid, I would just take this out of the mold at this point when there's two parts, and then I would line it with like just a wall of clay and put it back together, so then I do have a hole. So that it's, because this right here represents metal. It's wax right now, but it represents what I want in metal. So if I don't want this to fill, I have to put a sand mold in here. So I'll have these two halves, and I'll flip it upside down, and then I'll put a frame around the whole mold, and then I'll pack this just the same way. Yeah, and so then when I pull it apart, I'll have three parts. I'll have this part, and then this cone that comes out in the middle of it. Okay. And usually I'll put a little rod in there or something so that if it breaks, it doesn't actually come apart, because I don't want it to break and fall down in there, and then I have something weird happening up here. Let's see. Okay, so here, what I'm putting in here, hi, how are you doing, Robert? What I'm doing here is putting in a layer of graphite. So graphite is a farm implement, makes things slide. Lubricator. It's a farm implement lubricator. And so it actually makes the surface a little bit nicer on the metal, because otherwise you get a little bit of a grainy surface, which you can see in this. And that's what the surface of your piece will look like, unless you put this layer of graphite on. It will help the metal run through. And this was made in a sand mold, but if you look really closely, you can see like that there's granules, but barely, because I had this kind of layer in between. So it's it kind of protects the surface, and it helps the metal flow really nicely through there. So I put it back together, and then I'm going to yoke it. I'm going to put two so that it doesn't come apart. So this thing that I have here is just two pieces of wood with some threaded rod through it, and I'm going to put it through there, and I'm basically going to clamp it with that homemade clamp. So it squeezes it together, and I can just move it around however I want without either side slipping. And that's how I will take it out to heat there. So I'll just and I'm making sure that I don't cover any of the holes that I need to either pour metal into or I need gas to come out of. And let's see. And then there's this last little thing that I do to the mold is put a cup on it. So this is just a little hole, and I don't want to aim into that little hole. Hi, thank you for coming. I don't want to aim into that little tiny hole that's like 1 inch. So I put a cup on it that's like a funnel, so that when I pour it or when someone else pours it, they have a little bit bigger target so that they can pour it, and even if they're off a little bit, it'll still funnel into the piece. And then the final thing is that I'll write on there the weight of what this original wax was, so that when people are coming with a pot of metal, they know they're starting with 100 pounds of metal. If they look at that piece and they go, oh, that's 110 or whatever. I don't know why I have 110 pound mold when I have a 100 pound capacity. But if they pour a 50 pound one and then they see a 100 pound one, they'll move on and go to a different, like 50 pound or a 30 and a 20 or something like that until the metal's gone. So that's just so that you don't short pour somebody's piece. And then final one, oh, right here. The final video, or the second video, is the actual pour itself. So this is 15 years old. I'm a youngin' in here. But this is at UW Oshkosh. When I taught there for 5 years. And this was the furnace that we had. So the furnace is round because when the flame goes in, it needs to be able to make a circle around the crucible, which is the pot that the metal melts in, and that's made of clay graphite or silicon carbide, but I couldn't explain to you what silicon carbide is. I don't know. It can handle metal and heat. But it's a thick pot. It's like probably an inch thick all the way around. It's kind of shaped like it's got a belly. It's kind of shaped like this. And then it's open on the top. It stays open on the top the whole time. It goes into the furnace. You put whatever metal in there, bronze or aluminum. Iron is a different kind of tool that we melt with. But bronze or aluminum, and then you light it, it gets hot enough, which bronze would pour that about a little over 2,000 degrees. The melting point is 1950, and aluminum is poured about 1350, and it's about 1250 melting temperature. Okay, so I'll just play through this and try to talk through it as well. So almost all my students were young women. It was always really great. There was a really kind of tight group. I still am, I keep in touch with these women, and often they come and help me pour still. So this is the tongs, and that's going to go in and pick up the hot metal. So it's a steel welded tool that can go in and pick up the crucible, which is the vessel that's coming out right now. And you can see how it just is glowing super hot. And then they put on a bale, which is this triangular thing, and that hooks up to the hoist. So this was a really big capacity furnace, and these molds are different. I'll talk about them in just a second. This is you could melt 300 pounds of bronze, I think, in this, and a third of that, well, that would be 100 pounds of aluminum in this. So this we had a hoist for, so that we could lift it, and then we just have one person manning the hoist that was, doing the buttons and up and down, and stop. And let me just back up. This is moving too fast. Okay, so these molds, these are just different molds. So this kind of mold, the sand mold that I just showed you, is what I do most of my work in now, just because it's partially because I'm impatient, and you can do a mold, like each part of a mold can set up, like it takes a long time to, get everything situated, but each of those parts can cure in like a half hour. So then you can flip it and do the next part, half hour, then you can pick it up, do the middle part, a half hour. Whereas these kind of molds that are this white color, that's a ceramic shell mold, and those you dip your piece into it. So instead of drilling into your mold and making the holes for the metal to go in and vents for the metal to come out, you build those right into the wax. So I wouldn't start making the mold of this yet. I would actually figure out how I want to pour it this way. I'd put a wax sprue on here, which is the entry point for the metal. I'd put some vents on here, which are exit points for the metal, and then I'd put a cup on top, and that would all be in wax. And then I would take this whole thing and I'd dip it in this vat of what looks like plaster, but it doesn't harden until you let it air dry. Plaster is a chemical setup, but it has the same consistency and it looks very similar. But there's also silica sand in it, and that like bonds it and also helps it take the amount of heat that the metal will put into it. So those are just a different kind of mold, and that's all we did at UW Oshkosh. But most of what I do now is almost all sand molds. Those take like, you dip it and then you have to wait like 2 hours, and then you dip it again and you have to wait like 2 hours, and it needs like 8 coats, so it can take days. You know?
Are those types of molds that you can't reuse?
You can't reuse those either. Yeah, because those are actually the ones that you melt the wax out of. So when you melt the wax out of those and then you pour them, you have to break the mold off. So I'll tell you a story from what my professor did in undergrad when I also went to school at UW Oshkosh. My very first pour, I was so excited, and your actual piece melts out of the mold, so you have an empty vessel to pour the metal into. And so he comes out and he says, "Tree, your sculpture's gone." And it was like, "What?" And he goes, "But your mold looks great." And I was like, "Oh my gosh." So I was initiated. And I was like, "Oh yeah, that makes sense." So that's what those molds are. And then, so we will just carry on here, finish this up. We put that down. I usually put my crucible back in the furnace to cool it really slowly so it doesn't get damaged. And then we always turned off the lights at UW Oshkosh because we could. It was a windowless foundry, so we could turn off the lights and look at the glowing metal and the glowing molds. And then you can tell, looking at these molds, if you had a part that was too thin, because the mold itself would glow. It wouldn't be just the top, like the mold itself would glow. But they're very strong molds. So it was you could get away with going a little bit too thin, and it would be, then the metal would harden, and you'd open it up and be like, "Whoa, my mold made it." Oh, and look at, this is the green gas. That's how you know that you have the right, you have to balance the air and the gas, and that's how you know that the gas and the air are balanced correctly, because you'll get a green flame out of there. It's kind of like you're doing the same thing that you would do with welding. You're looking for like a specific flame. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of this one and go back to this one. And
go to view and hit slideshow.
Do what? Go where?
Oh, if you go up to view and then hit slideshow in the drop down menu.
View. Oh, right there. Sorry, I don't know. Oh, my glasses are right here. Slideshow. I'm doing this at the screen. Okay. So now you can tell how this one was made. These that I welded, the parts, those I'll have, like this one has 3 sides, so I'll have 3 flat pieces, which are very easy to mold because it's just flat. You lay it flat in there, you pack the sand on it, flip it over, pack the other side, open it up, peel that out, put it back together, drill the holes, put it back together, and you're done. Then the torso is just a little bitty, they're little bitty like this. So it's just a small mold. So it's so much easier for me to manage, even though I have to make more pieces. It's so much easier for me to manage those molds because they don't get huge and heavy. But then I have to do the welding on the back end, which is okay. I like it. I can play with a little bit with the texture and make it, part of the design. Aluminum and iron are so fun, but bronze is good. And then these are also welds. So that one is like almost my height, and so those are big, long sand molds, but they're real thin. They're like this, so I can flip them, onto a cart, and I can manage them. So I try to make my pieces so that I can manage them. My work is it's really inspired by my years of teaching. young women in sculpture and seeing them come into the sculpture studio, like me, not necessarily wanting to be there, and kind of like just getting it out of the way, like I was telling you, Cynthia. I just wanted to get this class out of the way. So I see my students come in like that and be like, I can't dress cute in here. I don't want to get all dirty and and I always tell them, if I can do it, you can do it. And just don't wear your nice clothes in here. And that they bring along extra shoes because they want to wear their cute flip-flops. And they go through the class and I watch them transform. I watch them, go, I never thought I would weld. I never thought I would be using a welder or pouring hot metal. And I can see that like in their face, like how proud they are. And it's so rewarding for me. And so my sculptures are about that kind of juxtaposition of being having these feminine qualities and this, lightness and, loveliness, how I see all my students, but then having this grit and like going in there and doing this sweaty, yucky work, and then be like taking off all your gear and being like, woo, high fives all around, and just like they're such tough girls, they're such tough girls. And I just feel so lucky to have been able to be a teacher for so much of my life. And so these sculptures are often named after my students. Because I'll find in them, like I don't ever really intentionally start with like, oh, this is going to be this student, but their attitude will kind of develop through the sculpture, or a little bit of maybe their, sometimes a little bit of their likeness, sometimes a little bit of their frame, and then so the sculpture will get named after them. They always kind of start with the idea of either being an earth mother or a water goddess. So the aluminum ones are always water goddesses because they're silver, and I do like blue a lot with them, like this one. This is element water. She doesn't have a student name, but I was going to do a series of the 4 elements, and so I did earth and water, but I couldn't figure out how to do the other 2. Maybe they're still to come, we'll see.
I have a question with the blue. Where's the color come from?
I use a dioxide, which is made for aluminum, and it comes from a place called Sculptor, and they make all kinds of like traditional patinas, like I don't know what science you're into, but like cupric nitrate, ammonium sulfate, and all the sciencey names. So they have all those that you can order, liver, sulfur, that stuff. But then they also manufacture these dioxides that are really. They really work well on aluminum because it's such a light canvas to begin with. But they also, they can work on bronze, they're just not as like luminous. But then they'll also make like patina stains, and you can get like deeper colors with patina stains rather than dioxides. Dioxides are kind of like watercolor, and patina stains are kind of like gouache. I don't know if you know. Okay. Yeah. And then I don't know if I know the word.
Texture.
But they're okay. Yeah. They have more like they have more body to them. Like the stains have a little bit more body than the dioxides. So that's and then they stay on. So it can rain on this. It can get blasted with salt water. If you blast it with a sandblaster, it'll come off. But it can handle all kinds of weather before it even fades a little. And then over the years it will oxidize and fade a little bit, and then you can always go back and re-dioxide it. And so that's kind of where the inspiration from my sculpture comes from. It's from earth and water and caring about the environment, and then seeing my students kind of develop in the sculpture as well, and what they're made of, being metal, being such a tough material. It just speaks to what I feel like these young women overcome throughout their whole lives. And I hope that when they're, after they're out of college and they're doing graphic design or whatever their major was, that they can sometimes look back to sculpture and be like, I can do this thing because I did all those hard things in sculpture. And just because I can see the confidence happen in them. And so I hope that that's something that they take with them when they you know, when they go through life. And maybe, like some of them, they come and help me pour at other times. And I do public pours because I love involving the community. So I have a little, like what you saw in the video with that big round, heavy looking furnace that was melting the metal. You can actually just make a little bit, if you have like, you can make a cupola out of like an old Folgers tin, you know, line it with some ceramic wool, and then like put a little fire there with a hairdryer on the end of it, and like melt some metal. It just needs that flame just needs to circle around that little pot that you have in there. And they make little ones, little bitty ones, and you can melt metal and do that. So I have one that will melt like 12 pounds of aluminum at a time, which, you know, it's like maybe this tall. It's real cute. I can do it by myself, just take the little thing out and pour. And then that would be 36 pounds of bronze, because it's 3 times aluminum is what the volume of bronze, or the weight of bronze. So because that is so, I'm almost 50 and now it's getting really hard and I feel it in my body after I pour. So yeah, that's your piece.
What's the melting point of aluminum?
The melting point of aluminum is 1250. So we pour it at about 1350, so that by the time you get it to the mold, it's still hot enough that you can pour it and it can flow through. But 1250 is generally
And iron?
Iron is 2350.
Oh wow, a lot.
Yeah.
And bronze?
Bronze is 19. I don't know why there's always 50, but I never really tested it, but this is what I've been told. It's in the charts and stuff. And it really depends. I mean, there's a few degrees difference depending on the alloy, but it's negligible. So, but because that work is so hard and heavy and hot, and I get, you know, I'm all sensitive now and I can't lift what I used to, I started to do these collages, and there's parts in them, like yours has real nails in it, because I have all these metal pieces in there. So this one belongs to her. Thank you for supporting me.
my daughter.
But you can see, like, if you look at these, there's real nails in this one, and then there's blacksmithed, like pictures of things that were blacksmithed, that were like iron that's been pounded out. That I took those pictures, and I took the pictures of the flowers and I cut those all out. So it's a combination of like flat collage pieces and then actual like metal bits, and sometimes I put seeds in them and whatever. This is real metal also, these little gear looking things, and that's from a tool called a dressing wheel. Those wheels get dull and they go bad. They're actually for cleaning the angle grinder that I grind the edges of the sculptures with. So those get dull, and so I save them, of course I save them. And so now I have metal in my collages. And then here's 2 more. These are real bobby pins that are in this one. And this one she doesn't have any metal. She just has like some little, she has a little like real like stick in her hair. But I combine some 3-dimensional elements with the 2-dimensional pieces because I don't remember how to paint. So that's what I'm doing more of this now and being a little nicer to myself. So these take me a lot longer now because I'm not in such a rush to be like, all right, let's pour metal. You know, now it's more like, oh, here, pour metal. So I do less of these now and more work like that. That still reminds me of my students and a lot of the components that are in the sculptures. But so they're still about strong women and about earth and environmental concerns. But they're flat. They're lighter, not so heavy. So do you all have any questions for me? That's all I have. Thank you again for coming out in the rain. I appreciate it so much, and Thank you for your support. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your support.